Recipes for beef and vegetable soup traditionally call for hours of simmering to create big, beefy flavor. We challenge test cook David Pazmino to do it in just 60 minutes. David will also take us shopping to find the best cuts of beef when making soup. Finally, test cook Kenji Alt is going to show basic techniques for using a chef knife.
Traditional beef vegetable soups have a hearty flavor but take hours to make. We wanted to make a soup that cooked quickly without sacrificing flavor. Start by marinating the beef in soy sauce, an ingredient rich in natural glutamates, which lends food a savory, meaty quality. Cook mushrooms and onions until they are well browned and a rich fond is developed on the bottom of the pan. Remove from heat and set aside. Next, add the beef into the pot and cook, stirring occasionally until the liquid evaporates and the meat browns. Then add the tomato paste and garlic and cook until aromatic. Deglaze the pan with red wine, making sure to scrape up the brown bits from the bottom of the pan. Cook until syrupy. Then add the beef broth, chicken broth, carrots, celery, and 1 bay leaf, as well as the reserved mushrooms and onions to the pot. Bring to a boil, reduce heat to low, cover, and simmer for 25 to 30 minutes. If you like a heartier soup, you can add potatoes during the last 15 minutes of cooking and peas during the last 5. Once the soup is ready, turn off the heat, remove the bay leaf. The finishing touch here is to add the gelatin mixture. This adds a richness and texture that is only achieved by cooking tougher cuts of meat over a long period of time. Top with parsley and serve.
The key to beef and vegetable soup is finding the right cut of meat. We wanted the beef to be fall-apart tender without hours of cooking. First, we turned to stew meat, which was already cut into bite-sized pieces, but even after a half hour of cooking, it was still far too chewy. It would have taken at least a couple of hours for this meat to be worthwhile to eat. Next, we turned to more tender cuts of meat, from the rib and from the sirloin. It did turn out more tender, but our test cooks didn't like the livery and chalky flavor from these more expensive cuts. Next, we turned to our more loose-grained, open-structure pieces of meat, like our flank steak, our blade steak, our skirt steak, and our sirloin tip steak. All of these offered the beefy flavor and shreddy texture that we were looking for in a 30-minute cook time. Of these, everyone really liked the sirloin tip steak. It offered the best of both worlds, shreddy with a great beefy flavor. When buying sirloin tip steaks, we recommend that you buy the whole steak, rather one that's already been cut up for stir fries.
An 8-inch chef's knife handles the vast majority of cutting tasks in our kitchen. It does everything from mincing herbs and slicing onions to portioning meat. There are 2 basic grips for holding a chef's knife, and the first one is called the handle grip. With this grip, your thumb and your forefinger rest on the handle of the knife. This is the grip that's favored by most cooks with smaller hands. The other grip is called the blade grip, and with this grip, your thumb and your finger actually hold onto the heel of the blade. This is the grip that most of the test cooks prefer to use because it gives you a little bit more control over the tip of the blade, which leads to better knife work. Properly positioning your non-knife hand is essential to making sure that your cuts are safe and even. You want to start by making sure your food is stable by giving it a flat base to rest on, like this. Now with your non-knife hand, hold the food by curling back your fingers into a bear claw position, making sure that your thumb is tucked safely behind your fingers. Lay the flat part of the blade against your knuckles, and using one fluid motion from the tip of the blade to the base, slice your food. If you're going to be making multiple cuts, use the curvature of the blade to guide the knife back and forth through the food, like this. Make sure that it always stays rested against your knuckles, and move your knuckles backwards slowly to make sure you get even cuts. As long as your knife is sharp, you should be able to cut through the food with one fluid motion, from the tip of the blade all the way down to the heel. Mincing herbs and vegetables requires a different kind of motion. For really bushy herbs like this parsley, you want to start by bunching it up against the blade of your knife like this. Keeping your fingers curved into the claw position, rock the knife back and forth against your knuckles using the curvature of your blade to guide your strokes. Now place the tip of the knife against the cutting board with your knife hand held high. Use your other hand to gently hold the blade in place and use a rapid rocking motion to reduce the herbs to a fine mince. Your knife should stay in contact with the board at all times.
To get the recipe and other information featured in this podcast, go to cooksillustrated.com/podcast.